Well, hello, friends. I am super excited to introduce you to today's guest. My friend Loren Collins is joining us on the podcast today to talk to us about some really great things. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. So, Loren is a registered nurse, certified reflexologist, mama to Juniper, wife to Graham, and Jesus follower. After struggling with debilitating premenstrual symptoms that later led to a PMDD diagnosis, Loren began a healing journey of seeking to understand her body, cycle, emotions, and what it meant to be a daughter of God amidst the wind and waves of premenstrual anxiety, irritability, and depression. She now shares her knowledge and experience with women who feel lost in hormonal imbalances and emotional dysregulation by teaching natural and holistic strategies that work with the body and cycle God created them with. She does this in her podcast, PMS Made Peaceful, and through her group coaching course, Healthy Hormone Reset. I met Loren through this super fun podcasting thing, and she has just such a kind heart and is so knowledgeable in what she teaches. And I wanted to have her on because I think that it's so important for us as women to understand our bodies, understand how God created us, understand our hormones. Hormones don't have to be a bad thing. Just knowing how they work and how we can balance them and just support our bodies throughout our cycles and the ups and downs. It's just so valuable to know this. And so she shares some really great things. I think that when we are out of balance, our healing journey, our grief healing journey from abortion can be so much harder. And so I just pray that you take away some things that Loren shares with us today, that you can adapt into your own routine so that you can really just have a full holistic healing experience. So without further ado, here is Loren on abortion recovery for Christian women. If you're tired of living with shame and guilt and want simple steps to heal, find peace, and feel less alone after abortion, you are in the right place. Hey, I'm Brittany, wife, homeschooling mom of two, abortion recovery coach, and pro-life speaker. I learned the secret of how to find healing and redemption from my past. Spoiler alert, it's Jesus. If you're ready for tactical post-abortion healing tips, biblical truth, and strategies for grieving forward, then this podcast is for you. Let's crack open that Bible and get ready to receive the good news. You want to heal from your past decision of abortion, but you literally have no idea where to start. You feel alone in this, and you know that you need to partner with God, but you open up your Bible and you don't even know where to begin. What if I told you that there is a way to heal alongside someone who's been through it without having to shout out your secret for the entire world to know? I've been right where you are, and trying to find healing on my own brought failure after failure. You don't need to do this alone. You don't need to tell everybody what you've been through. You don't have to spend the rest of your life wondering if this is ever going to get better, and you don't need to continue carrying this heavy burden of shame and guilt any longer. Join me on a one-on-one abortion recovery breakthrough call so I can help you find the tools to partner with God, uncover the areas of your life that need healing, and move forward in your grief towards wholeness and peace. You can schedule your call with me at brittanypoppy.com/coaching. Well, hello, friends. We are back for another episode of the podcast. And today I have a special guest. My friend Loren is joining us, and I am so excited for you to meet her. So, Loren, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Brittany. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I've been looking forward to this ever since we connected and decided that we were going to do this. So I think the listeners are going to be so blessed by what you have to share.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yes. All right. So why don't you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Loren Collins. I live in Canada, in Alberta, in Rocky Mountain community. I have a daughter. She just turned 2. She keeps saying she's still almost 2, even though she's 2 now. But her name's Juniper, and my husband's name is Graham. And I have been a registered nurse for over 11 years, working in many different areas of nursing. But recently, I have kind of veered in the direction of my career, and I'm doing a lot of work with women with hormonal imbalances and doing a lot of reflexology, which I love doing, reflexology for people. I have a podcast, PMS Made Peaceful. You can guess what that's all about: PMS and PMDD and hormonal imbalances. And it's really based on holistic, natural, but faith based approaches to balancing hormones and really understanding your cycle and partnering with God in how to take care of your body, because he's the one who made us, and so he's the best guide for us. He has the most wisdom for us. So that's a little about me. I love being outside. It's spring here in Canada finally. And so yeah, going on lots of walks with my daughter and my husband. And yeah, love lavender, farmers markets, and chocolate.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
And it's like the season for some of that now too. So, so
Exactly.
good.
It's perfect.
So good. I love that. And I love how you mentioned, just having such a God-centered approach to what you do, because I think as women, we have so many lies thrown at us from society just about like our bodies and our hormones and how to fix them. And, going to God who created us, like you said, is really like the first foundational step. So I just love that so much about what you do. And that's why I was so
Mm.
excited to have you here. But I would love to know just kind of how God led you to doing this work. How did God kind of place it on your heart that this was, your calling?
Yeah, so it started way back when I first got my period, and that was when I was 16. And it was kind of like a whole concoction of stuff going on in my life. Like I switched from a tiny little 60-person Christian school in grade 9 to a huge high school, public school where I didn't know anyone. And then I got my period, and I just got a lot of social anxiety as well during that time in my life, where certain times of the month I would feel great and I would feel confident and I could like do the things that I felt I was supposed to do. And then other times throughout the month, it was just like anxiety, and I like presentations were always just so scary, like talking in front of people. I hated doing that. But it was just like this flip flop throughout all of high school of just like, what is going on with me? What is wrong with me? And asking that question a lot, like, what is wrong with me? Like I should go get like an MRI or something of my brain, because something is clearly not functioning correctly. My mom though was like a huge support, because she had also struggled with that when she was younger, where like she told me like, it's your cycle, it's your period. Like the week before my period too, I would feel this way, and I wouldn't be able to get up in front of people, like I'd just be shaking. So that was really encouraging to be validated by her, and just to feel like, okay, there's something going on. But I was 16. Like it's not like I started paying attention to my cycle and all of that, but it was that was when it first started. And then as the years went by, and yeah, I would just like notice connections with the week before getting my period, where it would just be this like, I would call it the world is about to like explode week. Like, and I feel like there's this impending doom coming upon me, and anxiety would be high. And I would question myself and feel like I wasn't a good Christian, because I had so much anxiety, so much like confidence issues. And yeah, this kind of just went on for a really long time. And then I was finishing my nursing degree and moved to Vancouver in British Columbia, also in Canada. And the first 6 months were great. And then I just, yeah, starting a new job and doing night shifts. And I think the change of moving to a different province and having just my life totally different finally caught up to me. And for yeah, for 3 months, I didn't actually get my period because I was just so stressed and there was so much going on. Like my brain, I would say that was like my darkest time in my life where I actually was struggling with like suicidal ideations and just feeling like, well, what's the purpose? Like I'm useless, I'm worthless. And, just all these lies from Satan that just bombarded me. And so that was kind of the first, like really, really lowest part of my life point at that time, and sought counseling. And there was people in my life who were just there to support me during that time. And then fast forward, I still kind of like, at that point, I paid attention to my cycle, but it wasn't really like, okay, like, how do I eat for my cycle? How do I move for my cycle? And, turn to God, especially in that premenstrual phase. And then I was working in labor and delivery, and that was really hard as well. And that was kind of like the next low, but it was at that point like, okay, I'm going to talk with a doctor about this. And someone had told me about a diagnosis called premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD, and she had struggled with it. So I was looking it up and I was like, okay, this sounds very, very familiar. Like it's basically like PMS, but like much worse. Like at work, you can't function in relationships. You're just almost like a completely different person for like a week or two before your period. Um, so I looked it up and I was like, okay, I should talk to a doctor about this. And I did. And I felt like I had to like write everything down and like prove something to her. But she just was like, yep, that's it. It's like, oh, okay. So that was 5 years ago now, like almost not to the day, but like April 2020 or March 2020. And from then on, it was almost just been this shift of like learning to work with my body instead of it and eat correctly. And yeah, just like really lean into God and be aware of those lies that come, especially in the premenstrual phase, and see them as that they are lies like from Satan, that Satan just wants us to be destroyed by our thoughts and by our past and by our past sins and all of that. And so it's really my passion to help women who are also struggling with that, just work with the body and the cycle that God gave them, and yeah, bring God into it. Like I can't do this work without God, because can't just say, oh, just go for a run. It's like, no, you need to like be rooted in God and know your identity. That's like the putting on the armor of God. So yeah, so that's the whole shebang.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love all of that. And, when you were talking about how the enemy would just kind of like, shout those lies into your ear at those moments, it's crazy how he kind of almost uses our cycles as like his own type of like spiritual battle. Like he
Mm.
knows those things about us and really just kind of capitalizes on when he knows that we're struggling a little bit more at a certain time. He'll just kind of pounce. He's like
Mm.
constantly looking for ways to do that. And I don't think most of us would really think about that, but it's true
Mm.
that that can be a huge thing. So, having God at the center of, I loved when you said working with your body, because I
Mhm.
think so often, again, the world tries to tell us, things to try to do to our body instead of like working with what we have. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for all of that.
Mhm. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so, hormonal imbalances might be like something that is new to the listener, because I think like a lot of us struggle with that, but we don't know that. And then when we
Mm.
go and we try to get help, that's not always addressed, right? I'm sure you see
Mhm.
that a lot. So if someone is listening to this and they're thinking like, hey, that might be something I'm struggling with, what would you say is kind of the first step in addressing that?
Yeah, I would say first off, you really need to be paying attention to your cycle, and just like, especially if it's like a premenstrual issue, you need to know when the symptoms are happening. So it's like if you are experiencing anxiety all the time and maybe it gets worse before your period, then that could be something called premenstrual exasperation. But if you don't have anxiety or like any symptom, not just anxiety, but it's suddenly like the week before your period that you're just like, whoa, like I can't handle life right now. It's just too much. Then that could either be PMS or PMDD. And there's lots of other symptoms too, right? That like depending on what our cycles are doing, like what is our blood flow, what's the color, and how long are our cycles, and are we ovulating? Because that's a huge marker of like health and hormonal balance. Like, are you ovulating? Because everything and it's not just for the purpose of getting pregnant, but it's just like that is a really big flag of like, are you healthy or not based on ovulation? So yeah, so the first thing I would say is just like be paying attention to your cycle. And there's lots of ways to be doing that. So you could be charting and like writing on paper. And something that is a really good indication of whether you are ovulating is one, if you have cervical mucus. I know that's getting right into it, but cervical mucus, like that slippery stuff that like that's like prime baby making material. And the second is if you're taking your temperatures in the morning, that is a good indication of whether you are ovulating because your temperature goes up after ovulation. And then, depending on how long it is that your temperatures are up until you get your next period, indicates how long your luteal phase is. And if your luteal, that's the second phase of your cycle or the premenstrual phase. If your luteal phase is not long enough, that could indicate low progesterone. And low progesterone is like the big culprit for like PMS and just feeling off because it's kind of like this protective blanket over estrogen excess or estrogen dominance. That even if your estrogen is normal, if your progesterone isn't normal, then it's your body's still like, oh, too much estrogen, too much estrogen. But it could also indicate way too much estrogen and not enough progesterone. So those are, I think that's like the first thing. You just need to be paying attention to your body of what is going on, what is the data showing, and what is, yeah, like the temperatures. The second thing I would say is just start eating for your cycle. And that doesn't necessarily mean like you have to, that it's more, I think this is a bit more of an advanced stage that if you're struggling with hormonal imbalance, you have to start regulating your blood sugar. And that's a really big part that often we just think like, oh, blood sugar, that's for people with diabetes. And I often thought the same thing. I actually had gestational diabetes during pregnancy, and it just caught me totally off guard. But like I learned so much during that phase. And I wonder if that was God's way of kind of like priming me for understanding it and then learning about it now just for like menstrual health regulation and hormone balance regulation and emotional regulation. It's actually like a really important place to start. Just like being aware of what you're eating and the order of food that you're eating. And the last thing I would say is just really understanding how God created our bodies. And that is like natural ways. Like he wants us to be outside. He doesn't want us to be in front of a screen. He wants us to get enough sleep. Like we don't do anyone any good if we're like chronically sleep deprived and like, yeah, we're not functioning to the extent that he wants us to. And so that's kind of like an overview of that one of just like making sure you're sleeping well and getting outside and moving your body and eating to regulate your blood sugar, things like that.
Yeah, those are some really amazing, like practical steps and super doable too. I think sometimes we think solutions for like hormonal imbalance or these kinds of struggles that we might be having are more difficult to attain, but in reality it's the simple things that God's already kind of given us. And so just knowing that, yeah, like you said, being sleep deprived is never really good or healthy, especially long term. And so yeah, just taking those simple steps, and you can probably take some small steps incrementally too to make improvements, I would guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think like when I first started, like for a while, it was just talking about like PMS and PMDD. And then I started moving into this hormone balancing aspect. And I was really intimidated by it at first because it was like, oh, hormone balancing. But it's like hormones are in our bodies, they're little messengers. It doesn't have to be this like elusive, like magical, mystical thing of they're in our bodies, they're doing the work, they're working whether we're acknowledging our hormones or not. But yeah, I think you said it, like, it's so true. Just start with those micro habits and those little changes, and they really start adding up. Like, yeah, it doesn't have to be this huge pivot of like change my whole life, because that's just not sustainable and that's overwhelming. And yeah, I don't know if that lasts.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Yeah, we want
Mhm.
sustainable. We don't want, so hard to get over that mountain that we never get over it.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with a premenstrual phase, that like it's so difficult to do stuff already. If you're doing the things in the follicular phase that like build up your habits, then that will keep flowing. So anyway.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I love that. I love that. So I love this question that you and I kind of chatted about when we were, kind of figuring out like what would be the best for the listeners to kind of hear. And it's, do hormone imbalances mean our bodies are against us? So what would you say to that question?
Yeah, I think initially it can definitely feel like that it's like, what is wrong with my body? Like, my body hates me, like, all of these doubts. But and this is why it's so important that we see our identity through God's eyes, that it's like, that's kind of like the bedrock and the foundation for it all. Because as soon as we start jumping on that roller coaster of like, oh, I'm doing great, I'm doing awesome, and then tank, and oh man, like I can't get this right. I'm not doing the things that I know help me feel better, or my mind is just spiraling. Like, if we can really focus on where our identity is rooted in, like that we have been purchased by the blood of Jesus, and like we are hidden with Christ in God, and nothing can separate us from the love of God, like all of these really vital truths, then it's it can start kind of see we can start seeing it, that like, instead of it just our symptoms and what we're experiencing, instead of it being this like, this is an objective part of who I am, this is who I am this diagnosis, this is me, it's my body. It's like, okay, no, like, this is a subjective part of myself, of like, this is who I am, rooted in God. But okay, I'm feeling really anxious now, or I'm feeling really low, or I'm really struggling with anger. And instead of like latching that onto ourselves as like, this is me, this is my life or whatever, it's like, okay, no, what is going on inside my body that's coming out on the outside as this symptom? And so instead of seeing it as, yeah, my body's against me, it's like, okay, we just need to be paying attention. And often the symptoms are an indication of what is going on in our body, of like low progesterone, like I was saying, or excess estrogen, um, or our blood sugar isn't regulated. And so when we can kind of clue into that, and then partner with God and say, God, give me the wisdom that I need. Like, what changes, like, what practical changes do I need to be making? Like, one thing for myself that God really started convicting me of was like, you just need to move more. Like, pure, simple, just just move a little bit more, and like, stop just sitting on your bum all day. And so that I'll try and work with you, and just like trust you that you are leading me in that. So yeah, so that's what I would say. No, your body isn't against you. It's actually a cry for help when you're going through these symptoms. And it's almost like a little flag saying like, pay attention to me and pay attention in this area of your life. So
Yeah, I love that you described it as a cry for help. Because
mm,
yeah, that's so true and such a great way to look at it. And kind of leads me into what I want to kind of ask you about next, which is, my listeners have dealt with a pretty traumatic event in their past, or multiple. Some of them have gone through abortion multiple times. And, this weight of guilt and shame just can kind of feel so heavy at times, like they can't even like lift themselves up and walk through the day. And I firmly believe that their hormone cycles can kind of be affected by this, or even sometimes their feelings can affect their hormones. So what would you kind of say to that? What's been your experience in working with women who have dealt with, trauma in general in their past, in regards to their hormones?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, especially with premenstrual dysphoric disorder, there is actually a lot of research connected to like childhood trauma and like sexual trauma, all of those things. And so you can kind of see how that fits in, that like you almost embody this past struggle or this past sin that happened to you or that you did, and every premenstrual phase you get reminded of it. And I remember one friend just told me, like, kind of what you were saying at the beginning, just like Satan wants to just pounce on us. And if we already have this place of, yeah, that we're sensitive to it, or I'm trying to think of the word, yeah, vulnerable. That's the word. If we're already vulnerable, like that's where Satan is going to jump on us, right? Like regardless of what we have done. Or a friend was saying that it's like Satan just comes and put his talons in our heads, and the lies that are already there that maybe we were able to work through before the premenstrual phase or like earlier in the cycle, that it's like, okay, yes, that's something. Suddenly it just becomes this like visceral, like full body, like you were saying. And so yeah, it's totally related. And I think it's almost like a catch 22, that you start, like you were saying, that like if your hormones are already kind of imbalanced, then that means that like your body's already sensitive to things. And that's kind of the main difference between PMS and PMDD, is that PMS can be like a hormonal imbalance going on. PMDD is like your body might be balanced, it might not be, but it's a hormone sensitivity. And so your hormones could be doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, but it's just your body saying like, I don't like these hormones, and so I'm going to respond in this way. And so yeah, so you can just see that like the emotional, it's not just a physical battle that we're dealing with when we're in that premenstrual phase. It's suddenly like a spiritual battle as well, where our minds can become, yeah, just so full of the lies and the condemnation. I think that's a huge thing, that Satan comes to just condemn and accuse and point fingers. And yeah, when there's that underlying issue going on, it's that much harder to believe the truth and what God speaks over us. But yeah, when we can work on that and claim it and keep coming back to God and ask God to help us to take our thoughts captive, that through his blood, like we are redeemed, and God sees us like as Christ, right? And that he loves and is gentle. Then when we can kind of see the difference between those two things, it's like, okay, that's Satan talking to me, and this is what I need to do now, and this is the direction I need to move to come back to God and remember his truth.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was so good. I love that. And just love how you talked so much too about how it's all kind of connected, spiritually, physically, and all of that. And I think it's so important for the listeners to just hear that. And I'm so glad that they got to hear your heart in that answer. I know that that comforted me. So I'm sure that that has comforted them as well. And knowing
Mm.
that this is definitely something that they can address and help make better instead of having to live with it and kind of have that doom and gloom feeling forever. There's so many different approaches that we can have to our whole health. And yeah, which is a lot of what you do. So that's so good.
Mhm.
Yes. So what kinds of like practical advice would you give the woman listening right now who thinks that they need help regulating their hormones, but they don't know like where to start? Where would you point them to?
Mhm. Well, I always have my podcast, PMS Made Peaceful, and that has lots of like really bite-sized, tangible, kind of practical, holistic ways of working through that. But also, like one of the first things that I did, like when I was first postpartum, and I was struggling with a lot of postpartum anxiety, but I just chose a habit that I would do every single day, and that was kind of like I just do it, like no questions asked, because I think often when we're in the hormonal imbalance, and especially when it comes to our mental health, like it's so easy to get into that spiral and then not know what to do what is the next step to do. So you might just be like really thick in your thoughts, and it's like, well, I have to do the dishes, I have to go exercise, I have to go like do all these things, and then it just becomes overwhelming and you become paralyzed, and it's like, well, I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to lay here on the floor or in the shower. That was often my go-to place, just sitting there. But if you can choose one thing that is just like, there's no decision making, it's just like, this is what I need to do. And for me, it was going outside. So with my daughter, it was just like, we go for a walk every single day, and that's like your movement, that's your sunshine and getting outside and all of that. So I would really recommend, yeah, just at the beginning, especially like just choosing that one thing that you kind of really stick to, that you don't have to decide to do every single day, or make all these decisions. It's just your go-to. And then what happens over time is, once you carve out, say, like if you go for a walk for 20 minutes every day, you carve that out and it becomes a natural habit. And so as you feel better and as you progress and kind of get more clarity about your situation, then suddenly, like, okay, I have this 20 minutes. Maybe I can actually like work out or meal plan, or, so I think it's the habit, or it's just creating that space that it really blesses you down the road, because you've gained that consistency and you've created that consistency in your life. And so it gives room for building on it.
Yeah, that's so good. And that's so practical too. And I love how so much of what you've shared today is all, simple. It's not
Mm.
so like we've talked about, we want this to be sustainable and attainable. And that's what your sharing is. It's very attainable and definitely works, over time as you continue to add in those simple steps and habits. So I love that so much, and think that that gives so much hope to the person
Mm.
who's really struggling right now with this. So I love that. So you mentioned your podcast, PMS Made Peaceful. How else can people work with you? So if a woman is like, I need to talk to Loren, she knows what I need, how can we get in touch with you and even work with you?
Yeah. So, yeah, my podcast has a new episode every Monday. And then I just launched a group coaching program, and it's through a course, Healthy Hormone Reset. And so its doors are closed right now, but they'll probably open up in a few months after this cohort has gone through. So that's the big area that you can work with me. And if you're in Canada, in Alberta, come see me for reflexology. It actually really helps for PMS. And then the other thing is, I do have a Facebook group, and I just finished a challenge. It's called the 8-week hormone reset challenge for Christian women. So we can link that in there too. And the challenge isn't going on right now, but that's the Facebook group that I have as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for that. I'll make sure all of those direct links are in the show notes. So, listener, if you're listening and you want to get in touch with Loren, you can easily just go click those links and find all of the things that she mentioned. Loren, thank you so much for coming on the show and just for your compassion and sharing your wisdom. It's just been a blessing to me, and I know it's going to be a blessing to others. And so, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I'm really happy to share.
Hey, beautiful friend, I hope that you found comfort from today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and leave a written review in Apple Podcast or a starred review wherever you're listening? It truly encourages me to know that this podcast is helping you. Also, if you're looking for more support from other women who have walked the same walk as you, please join us in our free Facebook community, Abortion Recovery for Christian Women. Please know that I pray for you daily, and I am here for you. I'll meet you back in a few days for another episode, but until then, take care and God bless.